Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. Ukraine War News Update. The first part thereof for the 25th of March 2025. I'm a little bit late to it today because, my goodness, just stuff goes on all day. I'm compiling my fallout video, my video for the fallout of the security breach that happened last night. I did a breaking news update last night. Goodness me, just compiling all of that. There's so much to talk about. And you've got all of that to look forward to, haven't you? So anyway, let's get on with it. With the starting, of course, with the Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply. You can find them in the description to the video below. And we have, I guess, slightly lower numbers in a few categories. Still significant numbers of artillery systems lost. The Russians, well, the Ukrainians must be explicitly trying to hammer the artillery systems, and the question is why? You would expect they would be wanting to do that ahead of counterattacks. Now, they are attacking in Belgorod, and you would expect them to be clearing out artillery all around Belgorod. They are attacking in, or counterattacking around Kupiansk, around Nadir, further down that northeastern front line. Not so much around Chasiv Yar as I can work out, but Toretsk further counters yesterday, and Pokrovsk has got pretty hot again for the Ukrainians pushing there. So a number of places they're attacking. Then there are rumours that you hear that, you know, it's hot right along the Dnipro River and maybe along the Zaporizhia front line. And could the Ukrainians be getting, you know, mounting enough reserves to do X, Y, or Z? And you're thinking, no, surely not. Surely they don't have the capacity for that. And then you look at these artillery systems, and you think they've had a week now of really big artillery degradation, Russian artillery degradation. And then you're thinking, well, if you're going to attack at all in the next forever, like if the Ukrainians are ever going to counterattack in any major way, now is the time. The negotiations are taking place, and if there's any decent probability of them bringing about some kind of agreement, then the Ukrainians and the Russians need to make as many gains as possible right now. They need, because the most plausible outcome is you're going to get some kind of frozen front line that'll be forced upon either side, or both sides, and that will be exactly where the map has the line right now. So the Ukrainians will be wanting to mount as much as they possibly can right now. That's why they're in Belgorod. They were pushed out of Kursk, and that was at a really inopportune time, because that was the bargaining chip. And it was a significant bargaining chip. What they're going to get in Belgorod isn't looking like it's going to be significant. But are they going to push in a number of places along the front line so that they can get some of their territory back in terms of frozen front lines? Then, if I was the, of course I'm not, and I don't really know what I'm talking about, but let's pretend I do know what I'm talking about. If I was the Ukrainian commander-in-chief, Sursky, I'd be thinking, right, so now's the time we need to get our stuff back. I would be looking at the value of the land. Like, what resources do we have kicking around these areas? Like, where are the lithium deposits? Where are the coal deposits? Pokrovsk is your coal. It's a coking area for the steel industry. So that's going to be important to get back. That kind of infrastructure is what you're going to want. Look at where these tailings heaps are, maybe, and you're thinking, okay, that could be a sign of what might be on the cards for a counterattack. I don't know. I would be not just pushing anywhere, but pushing, like, we've got limited resources. We're not going to militarily take back huge swathes of land. We don't have the personnel for that. So where do we take back? And it's you know, people can live wherever, right? You can. Bakhmut's been destroyed. You know, Pokrovsk is going to be pretty much done for, right? So you build towns wherever, right? But so that kind of infrastructure is not important. But you can't move seams of natural resources. They are there, and so I wonder if that's going to define where the Ukrainians counter, if they are countering, or maybe they just don't have the troops even to do that. So we'll see. But at the moment, the Ukrainians have caused the Russians to lose 1,180 personnel in the last 24 hours, 5 tanks, so that's down, 18 troop-carrying AFVs, almost at the daily average, 61 artillery systems, huge again in that category, 3 multiple launch rocket systems, and 98 vehicles and fuel tanks, which is typically pretty high. No Andrew Perpetual loss list as far as I can see. So just on to a few other bits and pieces here. Ukrainian Air Force has successfully struck a Russian manpower concentration in Kondratovka in the Kursk region, destroying the occupied facility and eliminating up to 30 Russian troops. That's according to the Ukrainian General Staff. So that will be going onto those figures, no doubt. I wonder whether Kursk will be ripe for the picking in terms, or maybe it's too late now, but when the Russians pushed the Ukrainians out, well, they're still doing that. You're talking about 70,000 troops potentially being up in that neck of the woods. That's a really high concentration of troops, and you would be wanting to look at places to eliminate as many Russian troops as possible in one fell swoop, such as this kind of claim here that you see. I imagine the Ukrainians are going to be clamoring to do more of that. Now, we hear that yesterday a Su-25 crashed. This is a training aircraft that crashed. It's not the first one, not the first training jet, that the military training jet that the Russians have lost, but that's another Su-25, and of course that would involve crew as well. So good news for the Ukrainians there. Strike on Russian electronic warfare system here. This is an R330 Zhetel. This is worth about $10 million. So this is a high value target, yet another Zhetel that's taken out. I've reported a whole bunch of these over the course of the war, but these sort of pieces of equipment are not easy to replace. In fact, let's look at the Zhetel in terms of what it does. R330. It's yeah, it looks like this. Mobile truck mounted electronic warfare jamming, so it's a jamming communication system. So that's what it does, mounted on a Ural or Kamaz 3-axle truck. So anyway, pretty decent bit of kit taken out there. Right, moving on, another video, fairly typical, but just a huge number of these. 89 Russian reconnaissance drones. They look like, are they supercams there? Yeah, 9 supercams, and you've got a whole bunch of others. I couldn't read that in time. So you've got Zalas, supercams, all sorts of different ones. Probably some Orlans in there. Don't see as many Orlans these days. Oh yeah, there's one Orlan. But 89 taken out in that video. That's quite incredible. And quite a few Lancets in there as well, which are not just reconnaissance, they are pretty explosive. So what a good haul there for that. The 3rd Assault Brigade really doing a good job of taking them out. Right, just random bit of video there of 5 Russian soldiers taking captivity here. This, I'm only including this because it shows that the Ukrainians are on the attack. You're only going to really take prisoners if you're attacking. You are rarely going to do that in defense. Popovka in the Belgorod region has come under the control of the Ukrainian armed forces, according to Russian mill blogger Romanov. Previously, several Russian channels, including Romanov himself, reported ongoing assaults with Ukraine's 8th SSO regiment reportedly involved. So this is up near the Demidovka area. In fact, Demidovka is there, and this is actually closer to the border, but just further northwest. It's the other side of a water feature, so it's slightly complicated to get there. That's probably why Demidovka was first on the list. According to Russian sources, yeah, the Ukrainians have entered Popovka. Quote, the enemy entered Popovka in a group of up to 10 people. We are working to eliminate them. They use cassettes, so these are going to be, I think, cluster munitions and FPV a lot. And now the enemy has also started using fiber optic drones. So they, obviously that's quite a small attacking unit, isn't it? But they are still making gains up in the Belgorod region. And indeed, talking about Demidovka, the Russians completely effed up, say the Ukrainian forces say, as they enter Demidovka in Belgorod, as 96% of the district flee. And I did report this yesterday, that there were claims from the Russians that their own troops just up sticks and left. Now, Ukrainian troops have cleared border mines and dismantled anti-tank obstacles, and in so doing creating a path into Demidovka after Russian defenses failed to stop their advance. So that's good news for the Ukrainians in that area. 3 Russian journalists from a pro-Kremlin media outlets under EU sanctions were killed in Ukraine after coming under fire. Zvezda cameraman Andriy Ponov, driver Alexander Serkeli, and Izvestia journalist Alexander Fedorchak. Both outlets are engaged in disseminating Russian state propaganda, and that's not the first time that's happened during this war. A whole host of Russian journalists sent to the front lines have indeed not come back. Right, a huge fire yesterday. This came out just after I released my video yesterday, so this was yesterday morning. Just an absolutely massive fire, and this is a penthouse apartment. This is like $1 million rubles bit of real estate there, gone up in flames. It's just absolutely massive fire. Well, you say massive fire. It's a lot of smoke. Probably not the square meterage to warrant me saying massive fire, but it looks significant. High value place, and it caused, as I say, an awful lot of smoke around Moscow. It's an elite residential complex. I don't know what caused it, but another example of #Russia on fire. Okay, moving on. Distant strikes last night. Now, 139 Shahid drones were launched into Ukrainian airspace. We've got another day of not really very good interception rates from the Ukrainians. So 78 were taken out with conventional means, 34 lost or suppressed by electronic warfare. That's 112 out of 139. That leaves 27 to have got through. 27 out of 139 is not a good interception rate, and that's wide-scale damage that would have caused. But what's interesting is I'm not hearing anything about any damage at the moment. That could be because there's a lot of bandwidth being taken up with the whole signal security breach in the US, and a lot of the usual sources are not talking about what's taken place last night. So no information about what may have been struck there, and I'm just going to fill you in with something that took place yesterday in Sumy. So, Tim White here says 28 people have been injured. Actually, it's far more than that in the end. Rocket hit the centre of the city. A children's hospital, school and residential buildings were all damaged. And yeah, pretty horrific. In fact, as J&Q says, filthy Russian bees just bombed a school, 65 victims, lots of kids. Where's effing Witkoff? So Steve Witkoff, who's waxing lyrical about how wonderful Putin is. I hope Trump and his crew really enjoy all that effing Russian money. So he's not very happy. And indeed, the latest update, Andrew Perpetuan, there's a lot of footage coming from this. Not good scenes from Sumy yesterday. 101 people were injured as a result of the missile strike. 78 adults and 23 children sought medical help. Currently, 14 adults and 16 children are being treated in hospital. 1 adult and 1 child are in a stable but serious condition. And you can see here how freaking crazy that was. A really major hit there in Sumy. That's north of Ukraine, very close to the border, really. Sumy goes into Kursk, where there's been that attack over the past 6 months or whatnot. So that's a major thing that happened yesterday. As far as Ukrainian strikes last night, I've not heard of any, but there will have been some. We'll come to that in a second. I just want to go back to this Kafka sky, which is still smoking today. There are still images of this appearing to be at least a little bit on fire. It's been burning for 5 or 6 days now. Now, Russians are reporting that the destruction of this oil, I think it's an oil depot, transshipment, pumping station, of their $350 million Kavkaz oil transshipment facility has made its operation impossible for, quote, the foreseeable future, taking 1.7 million barrels of oil a day offline. And it still burns. Wow. So this is huge. Like, that's the end for the foreseeable future of the transportation of oil through it to the CPC systems. That's the Caspian Petroleum Companies, or anyway, Caspian Pipeline Consortium. It literally says it. Caspian Pipeline Consortium system will be impossible in the foreseeable future. So that is huge. That's absolutely huge. Now, that's going to annoy not just the Russians, obviously, but Kazakhstan has I think that pipeline was built between Russia, Kazakhstan, and Oman, maybe sometime back in the 90s. Could be that far back. So they're not going to be happy. But the Ukrainians, and I was listening to Paul Warburg talking about sanctions. The US lift sanctions, it won't be too bad. Which, yeah, I agree to a point. I agree with that to a degree. Not 100%. I still think it is hugely problematic. Predominantly due to secondary sanctions on places like China and India, right? And I don't know that he dealt with that particularly, but anyway, yeah. So he talks about this balancing act between hitting Russia not enough but not too much in their oil infrastructure. So the idea is that they could have taken out much more of the Russian hydrocarbon infrastructure previously, but that would have left Europe completely screwed. And what the Ukrainians don't want to do is annoy their European partners too much. So it's about stopping the Russians being able to make too much money and then incrementally keep that pressure up and close down their ability to produce and transport hydrocarbons as Europe can wean itself off those Russian hydrocarbons. And then, you would get, Slovakia and Hungary giving you some hassle. But essentially you make it manageable for Europe to be able to adapt. Rather, if they hammered all of these points of, all these refineries and depots too early, too soon, too much, then it causes Europe as much as a hassle as it does Russia. Now, I don't know how accurate that kind of speculation is, or whether Ukraine are just doing everything they can all the time. I do wonder, how much is happening that we don't hear about. But anyway, we'll get onto that in a second. So, yeah, Kavazskaya, that's been knocked out for the foreseeable future. That's really big news. Now, Ukraine's new long Neptune missile, as it's been labelled, which hit an oil refinery in Russia a week ago, had been used before. Alexander Kamyshin, advisor to Zelensky, so he was a chap that was in charge of strategic industries, told Norway's Nettavisen the 1,000-kilometre warhead was first successfully tested on occupied Crimea. So this is what he said. So recently, Zelensky was able to tell the world that Ukraine had deployed a brand new Ukrainian-made crude missile called the Long Neptune, said to have a range of 1,000 kilometers and was used against a Russian oil refinery in Russia. What is less well known is that it was the second, not the first time the missile was used. The first time we used it, we attacked a military target on occupied Crimean Peninsula. Okay, so they've used it against a military target, maybe, I don't know, S-400 system or something like that. Or a bunker, I don't know. We have also, now this is where there's some nice cryptic hints. We have also tested a completely new system today, which I cannot say anything about yet, Kamyshin tells Nettavisen on Thursday afternoon. So he said that last week, but they've used a completely new system. Ooh, I wonder what that is. Now, Paul Sweeney has sent me some more images of firms data, so fires going on, particularly in Russia over the last sort of 16 hours or so. Last night he said, I can't see what's been targeted near Sarov and other sites nearby east of Volgograd, but it's been pretty tonked today. In other words, there's nothing from the socials about anything that's been hit in Russia, but there are lots of fires going on. There were lots of fires going on in Russia last night. Place now, what does he say? Rostov, Krasnodar. I'm seeing a preponderance of multiple spots on individual sites in the middle of fields and on urban outskirts away from any obvious infrastructure. So I'm assuming them to be strikes on artillery or cluster munitions which spread from cook-off, etc. And there's lots of places close to the border that were hit. Here's an overview of the morning strikes, starting with the overnight remnants at 8 in the morning. And you can see, I don't know if you can see there, you got Crimea, Azov Sea. So this is all in either in the occupied territories of Ukraine or it's into Russia there. So that is fairly significant for the Ukrainians to have achieved that. And with each new hour showing even more presumed strikes and mostly Russian positions. Let's see. Yeah, so there are huge numbers of fires there. So that's the latest one showing stuff over time, right? So this will be, an accumulation of strikes or fires. And again, a lot of these might be industrial. They might be natural fires, but a lot of these are going to be strikes as well, you would hope, from the Ukrainians. So it could be that Ukrainians are very busy and we just don't hear everything about them. I don't know, but the firm's data is certainly telling us it's hot around the occupied regions and into Russian territory. Okay, on to other bits and pieces. And thanks, Paul Sweeney, for that. Our Russian military. So this is someone reporting from Belgorod, their home in Belgorod. Our Russian military broke into our house. Alcohol is lying around. Our military are good, protecting us, all in scare quotes there, effing breaking into other people's houses. The Russian military entered the village of Repyakovka in Belgorod region and looted at least 20 houses of the local residents there. This is exactly what happened in Kursk when the Ukrainians attacked into Kursk, and the Russians they evacuated certain areas such as Koronovo. Koronovo was pretty much looted by the Russians themselves. So they go in to protect these places and then just loot them. It's horrific. Now, Ryanair CEO, so for those who don't know, maybe Americans, Ryanair is a budget airline. I don't know if it's UK based. Michael O'Leary, he's Irish, and obviously the harp on the back is denoting Ireland, but I don't know if it's actually UK based. Maybe it is Irish based. I don't know. Anyway, so it's in the UK, it's a really major airline and does a lot of covers an awful lot of Europe. Now, he has blasted Ukraine's airports over their lack of cooperation on resuming flights to Ukraine. So Ryanair's proposals to set the stage for the resumption of commercial flights to Ukraine have been met with radio silence for 2 years, the airline CEO Michael O'Leary said on March 25th. I don't know, maybe the lights are off in the airports and no one's picking up the phone. But yeah, I would expect them to be really gearing up towards getting flights back on. People have been comparing places like Israel that's really risky, and yet they have flights into Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, etc. And actually Lviv, there really could be flights into Lviv, one would think. But yeah, it is a risk, of course. Okay, VK, which is Russia's equivalent to Facebook, has lost $1 billion in the last year, even as the Kremlin pours in money to prop it up as a singular state-controlled or state-aligned media platform. Kremlin's throttling of YouTube was supposed to help, but not so much by all accounts. So, interesting nugget there. Now, we're going on to peace talks, which are still taking place. They had peace talks between the US and Ukraine first. Then last night there were peace talks between Russia, or yesterday daytime and evening, between Russia and the US. This is in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, and now they're meeting with the US is meeting with Ukraine again. So there are three talks going on. So that's just to, I guess, tell them what they found out with the Russians. Russia seeks full control of occupied Ukrainian regions in talks with the US, according to the media. A Kremlin-linked official told the Moscow Times that Putin cannot afford to lose these territories politically, and Russia intends to solidify its grip on them at any cost. Okay, so that's going to be not quite a maximalist lay of the land for Russia, but they are. I mean, some are claiming they want all of, say, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Luhansk, and Donetsk. The US won't comment, though. When they've been pressed in Pentagon briefings, they won't comment on Russia's claim to occupy Ukrainian regions until a ceasefire is brought about. Now, I think this is pretty poor, morally speaking, as in, they cast themselves as neutral rather than Russia has aggressively stolen these lands off Ukraine. The US just are refusing to give any kind of moral evaluation to Russia and to Putin. State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce refused to say whether the administration believes Russia has a legitimate claim to occupied Ukrainian lands. There's a lot of conversations happening, she said, so really dodging the pertinent questions there. Now, US and Russia are preparing a joint statement for 10 a.m., that's this morning, expected to announce a Black Sea ceasefire agreement. We haven't actually heard about this, or at least I haven't yet. According to CBS News, Reuters, citing a White House source, reports that a positive decision is expected soon following the talks in Riyadh, but that could be seen as controversial. We know that Bulgaria and Romania are a little bit wary of any kind of agreement involving the Black Sea, certainly the grain deal side of things, but there might be a ceasefire over the Black Sea, to which this particular source, Krautbender, says, totally predictable. Putin signs a cost-free, Russia-friendly deal so Trump can strut around pretending it's a huge diplomatic win. That's how some people are seeing that. Any kind of deal is being seen pretty much as probably being beneficial for Russia. But then we hear today that, and RT's reporting this from Peskov, the Kremlin spokesperson, content of the 12-hour talks in Riyadh, the content from yesterday, the Russia-US talks, will not be made public as they were technical consultations. So Julie Davis says, that bad, huh? I would interpret it possibly the other way. I mean, maybe the US came in stronger against Russia. They have had some pressure from others that they are just capitulating to Russia. Or maybe they are concerning the demands of Russia and they don't want them to be out in the public because they are embarrassingly maximalist or embarrassingly harsh on Ukraine. Because now the US is going to take those back to Ukraine and speak to them this morning. I don't know. You can interpret it both ways. Anton Gerashenko says Peskov made several statements on yesterday's US-Russia negotiations in Saudi Arabia. A Russia-US-Ukraine meeting is not in the plans currently. So there are no plans for all three to meet. That's interesting. So it might indicate that it was more difficult than had been imagined. There are currently no plans regarding a call between Trump and Putin. It can be organized quickly, though, if necessary. The content of the negotiations in Saudi Arabia will not be made public, as these were technical consultations, and the Russia-US contacts will continue, but there are no specifics as of now. The Kremlin's plan is to continue the war while blaming Ukraine for disrupting peace negotiations. That's Anton Gerashenko talking at the end there. Russian delegation is leaving the negotiations in Saudi Arabia. This is them leaving yesterday. Possibly a bit of a nothing burger, maybe more. And indeed, the US and Ukraine delegations are meeting presently in Riyadh to kind of wrap it all up. I don't quite know what to make of that. I'm unsurprised. These things are difficult. And the idea that we're a breath away from sorting this out and we're going to get it done in 24 hours, etc., is never going to happen. Okay. Thank you for that. Really appreciate your support. Take care, guys, and I'll speak to you soon. Don't forget, as I always say right at the end, we are still trying to fundraise for the NAFO trucks between ATP Geopolitics, Rick the Ukrainian, and Roman Trocomets. 93% almost there. Just 5,000 euros away from the 78,000 huge total there. So that's absolutely fantastic. I'm hoping to speak to Rick this week. I'll have a live stream sorted at some point if I can. But in the meantime, you guys take care and I'll speak to you soon.